This is Gemara Rosh HaShanah Daf Yomi. So the learning as we conclude this month of Cheshvan has been generously sponsored by a close friend of the Daf, Rav Eli, the Zecher Nishmas, his father, Harav Moshe ben Rav Chaim HaLevi, who Mirza Hashem should be going higher and higher in Gan Eden Shalmaila to the learning of Rav Eli and the entire Chabura, which keeps on growing by leaps and bounds. And Baruch Hashem, we could share this chos as an Eli Nishama, as well as the Shmiyas chos for our Shidduch Yisochaim and the Ver Shemirim Bas Yitzchak Shalais Shanamakal Mordechai ben Davar Shendel Yitzchak Bas Davar Shendel, as well as chos for Hashem Shal Yosman and Yerfeda Pesach Ben Yom Ben Sima Zelda Men Bebek Chaim Yisrael Zim Reiz Azar Bas Kanal Tito Bas Yom As Chaysay Yisrael Men Zelda Bas Shalai Shom As Nami Veshavik Shechan Shmal Batil Din Chaim Yisrael Chaim Yasmina. Excuse me, Naftali we're holding towards the bottom of Yurches Amid Beis. And actually, I would like to go back up a few lines. I know it's a bit lengthy, but we started yesterday the discussion whether the Megillah Tainis was batal, and we read it a little bit fast. We didn't really explain it so well. So, B'siyat D'Shmaya, we'll have time for everything. So let's pick it up. We're about 20 lines to the bottom. First one line is L'Seder Paranios, and then says the Gemara Itmar. Rav of Rav Chanina Amri Batla Megillas Tainis, Rav Yechon Rav Shimon Levi Amri Lo Batla Megillas Tainis. Megillas Tainis is actually a sefer that we have nowadays. It's a whole list of different Yom Tovim that they created. And the question is if these Yom Tovim are around, then on those days they have a status of a Yom Tif. Status of a Yom Tif, you can't fast, you can't make a Speidim. So the discussion is that list of all those Yom Tovim, does it exist nowadays or not? The Machlekes Rav and Rav Yochanan says it was Batal. Rav Yeshua and Levi and Rav Yochanan, Rav and Rav Chanina says Batal. Rav Yochanan and Rav Shimon Levi says it was not. And now the Gemara explains, Rav Chanina Amri Batal Megillas Tainis Achi Kamer Zanchi Shalom Yelis Hasan L'Simcha. When there's peace, then there's rejoicing. Ein Shalom, so when there's no peace, then there's fasting. V'hanach nami, and these days as well, kihani, are the same thing. So they hold it was batal, just like when the Beis Hamikdash was destroyed. Unfortunately, we lost the other days, so too we lost this as well. Whereas Rabbi Yochanan, Shimon Levi, Amri Loi Batla. No, we still have this list. Megillas Tainis, Anihu Tzalinu Rachman Bin Beis Hamikdash, Aval Hanach. Those, the previous list like we spoke about yesterday, those were dependent upon the Beis Hamikdash. But Megillas Tainis is a separate entity, and therefore Rabbi Yochanan, Rabbi Shimon, and Levi hold their own, that this dinim still apply of these days of a fast day. So Masav Rav Kahana, this is really where we're up to. There was a story in which they decreed a fast during Chanukah, and of course Chanukah and Purim were of the list of the Yom Tovim that are listed in Megillas Tainis. So they decreed a fast day during Chanukah. The Yard Rav Elazar said, "What are you doing? It's Chanukah." And he went to bathe. Rav Yeshua V'Siper, and he took a haircut. Go fast, for you fasted. You're not allowed to make a fast nowadays. What do we see clearly? We see clearly that Megillas Tainis wasn't batal. We see that these days still have a status of a Yom Tif. Rav Yosef, you can't ask a question from Chanukah because Chanukah dika mitzvah. There's a mitzvah, so that's why it wasn't batal. Let it and the mitzvah be batal. Elam Rabbi Yosef Nisa, as Mirza Hashem, Chanukah on the horizon. Chanukah is special because it's a special din of pursuing Nisa to publicize the nace, and that's the reason why you can't make a fast day on those days. But not necessarily does this have a bearing whether the Megillas Tainis is around or not. So now we have question number 2. On the 3rd of Tishrei, they were mevatel the fact that they wrote their names on this shtar. What exactly does that mean? Explains the Gemara. Shegazra Malchus Yavin Gzeira. They made a Gzeira. Shalhaske Shem Shemayim Al Piyam, that they weren't allowed to mention the name of Hashem. And therefore, when the Chashmonayim won in Yitzcham and they beat out the Greeks, they were so thankful that they can now mention the Shem Hashem, even on each and every document. They used to write the Shem Hashem. Of course, it's perhaps the precedent for that which you write Beis HaMachdalit or Beis Hey, B'siyat D'Shmaya, Baruch Hashem. They would actually write the Shem Hashem, Yud Kei Vav Kei, on all their shtarais. They write 4 lines at the bottom. This year to the kingdom of Yochanan Kohen Gadol. Likel El Yain, they would write the Shem Hashem. But when Chazal heard, Amru Lamachar, you can't do that because you know what's going to happen tomorrow. What happens after you pay up a star? The document is garbage. You can have a Shem Hashem, Rachmana Litzlan, that's going to go to the garbage, and therefore they said, Chazal, you cannot do that. Ubitlam, and therefore they said no more should you write the Shem Hashem on the documents. And on that day, and the day when Chazal won and said don't write the name Hashem, also Yantif, they made a Yantif. So now asks the Gemara, articulating its question, 2 lines to the bottom. If you're going to tell me they were mevatel in Megillas Tainis, that they no longer have those Yom Tovim, can it really be that they were mevatel and now we're adding on new Yom Tovim? The whole premise of getting rid of the Megillas Tainis is we don't have more Yom Tovim. So how can it be that we see over here that they're making new Yom Tovim? Must be they were not mevatel the Megillah Tainis. Answers the Gemara. That story was when there was still a Beis Hamikdash, so it's not a proof, because that's the reason why they still were able to make a Yontif. Says the Gemara, 1 second. What day was it? It was the 3rd of Tishrei. The 3rd of Tishrei is the day that Gedalia ben Achikam was killed, and therefore you weren't able. And and what do we say? We say that when the Beis Hamikdash was rebuilt, all those days of tragedy, all those days of fasting, like Soim Gedalia, came into Yom Tovim. So if we're dealing with the time of the second Beis Hamikdash, this day of the 3rd of Tishrei is already a day of Yom Tif. So why would they have to make it a Yom Tif? Amar Rav explains, Rav, loy nitzcha ela le'esar el shalaflanov. No, you know what it means? They created a Yom Tiv to make the day before, on the 2nd of Tishrei, that you can't fast. Ask the Gemara, Shalfanam nami teple davli yom shalachar Rosh Chodesh. 1 second. It should also be Asr and fasting, because the rule is the day before and after Yom Tov is Asr. So it's the day after Rosh Chodesh. Answers the Gemara, no, Rosh Chodesh da'araisa lo ba'i chizik. Rosh Chodesh is a din da'araisa, and a din da'araisa, they didn't have to make an extra chizik to make that it's forbidden the day before and after in Hesped. The Tanya is learned in a Raisa, Hayamim Eilu, these days, Aksuvim Megillas Tainis, Asurim Bein Lefneim Bein Nachreim. These days in Megillas Tainis, since they're all enactments of Chazal D'Rabbanan, so we made a special din that is also pre and post. Shabbos of Yom Tovim, Asurim Lefneim Nachreim, Mutarim. But on Shabbos and Yom Tiv, hey Masurim, those days, the days of Shabbos and Yom Tiv are forbidden. Lefneim nachreim mutarim, but pre and post are mutar. But my fresh bein zelizeh, what's the difference? Why on one are we say the day before you can make aspid, and another you can? Answers the Gemara, halalu divrei Torah, vein divrei Torah tzrichin chizik. Whereas halalu divrei sefer and divrei sefer tzrichin chizik. When it's a din d'Rabbanan, which we see many times, d'Rabbanan, even though they're more lenient, but an element we need to have extra chizik, extra strength because of their leniencies, whereas on a deraisa we do not. And that's the reason why potentially they made this yontif on the 3rd of Tishrei, so that the day beforehand you couldn't make a haspid. Ask the Gemara 1 second. The question that's probably been bothering everyone for the last 2 minutes. 1 second, that was also a din d'Rabbanan on the day that Gedalia ben Achikam was killed, and it's the day before that, so it's already be Yasser and haspid. Amar Rav Ashi Gedalia ben Achikam divrei Kabbalahu, v'divrei Kabbalah k'divrei Torah dami. So there's 3 levels. Din d'Rabbanan, and then the day before and after is Asr. Din d'Oraisa, day before and after is not Asr. And the Gemara now is explaining that divrei Kabbalah are on the same level as divrei d'Oraisa. Says the Gemara, Masiv Rav Toivi Bar Masna. About 20 lines down, first one in line is Be'esrim. Another question, whether Megillas Tainis was batil. Be'esrim etamni bei, on the 20th day of Adar, atat b'shurta tavata liyudai. There was good news that came to the Jews that they did not have to remove themselves from Torah study because in those times the king decreed they can't learn Torah. They can't give their children bris milah. And they have to do Chal Shabbos, of course, the 3 decrees during the times of the Greeks. What do they do when they heard this fabulous news? They could learn again. They could do bris milah again. They could do Shabbos Shabbos again. They went and, excuse me, I read this wrong. One more time. Let's go back for a second. They got the news. What was the news? That they did not have to stop learning Torah. Why? Because the Romans made a decree that they shouldn't learn, that they shouldn't give bris, that they can't keep Shabbos. And then what happens? What do they do? They went and they took Eitzah. What was the Eitzah? What was the advice? To go to the Roman noblewoman. Shekol Gedoli Romi Mitzuyin Etzlar next her. Amra Lahem, she said to them, she told Yehuda ben Shamua, Bo v'ifkinu balayla, go and cry out at night. Again, I'm sorry, it was a little bit confusing because we're not clear yet what the good news is. But they heard the news that they can't learn, they can't do bris, they can't do Shabbos. So what happened? I said, what should we do? She said, go and make a hafgana. Go and protest at night. They said, Ishamayim lo yachechem anachnu. What do they say? Ishamayim. For Shem Hashem lo yachechem anachnu. Are we not your brothers? V'lo b'nei av echad anachnu. We're not the sons of one father. V'lo b'nei imach as anachnu. Man nishtaninu mikol uma v'lashain. Why are we any different than every other nation? Shatem koizim alenu gzeres kashais. Why are you giving us these terrible decrees? They cried out. And what happened? Ubitzlam, and the Romans got rid of the decree. So on that day, they made a yontif. So what's the question again? So you had a whole long brace that they had this terrible decree. They didn't know what to do. They went to the noblewoman. Noblewoman said, go and cry out at night. They went and cried out at night, and they got rid of the decree. So what's the end of the story? Asked the Gemara, 7 lines to the bottom. And if you're going to tell me that they got rid of the original Megillas Tainis, can it be that they added on to new Yom Tovim? If they got rid of the original ones, certainly they didn't add on to new ones. Maybe I'll give you the same answer. This was while the Beis Hamikdash was standing. Asked the Gemara, it can't be. Yehuda ben Shemua, Talmud shel Rameir. Yehuda ben Shemua was a Talmud of Rameir. Rameir basar achiavi. Rameir was after the destruction of the Beis Hamikdash. The Tanan, as we learned in the Mishnah, kli chasuchas shenikvo, a kli chasuchas, a glass keli that has a hole in it, and they put inside of it lead to plug up the hole, and now the vessel is usable because there's no more a hole. Yehuda ben Shemua says that this vessel is tamei. Mishum Rameir, and the name of Rameir, as we turn over to Yechesam Abiz v'chachamim mitarin, they say it's tar. But what do we see clearly? We see clearly that it was well after the destruction of the second Beis Hamikdash. So we're back to our question. We started off today with a machlokes whether Megillas Tainis was batul, but we see not only seemingly is it not batul, they're still making new days of Yom Tif. So if they're making new days of Yom Tif, certainly the original one was not batul. Answers the Gemara on the top line. Tanoi, it's a machlokes Tanoim. The Tanya Yom Elu Aksumim Megillas Tainis these days. Beim Mizvan Shemikdash Kayim. Beim Mizvan Shem Beis Hamikdash Asurim Devi Rameir. Rameir holds that these days are all usher to fast, that the status of Yontif still exists. Rabbi Yossi Omer B'zan Shemikdash Hamikdash Kayim Asurim Neisha Simcha Yilahem, because it's a joy to them. Ein Beis Hamikdash Kayim Mutarim Im Neisha Abal Hulahem, because it's a sorrow to them. Ve'elchasam, what is the halacha? Batla, and the halacha is that the Megillas Tainis is batal. Ve'elchasa loy batla. Says the Gemara, kasha elchasa. Is it batal or is it not? What's going on? Explains the Gemara, like kasha kan beChanukah Purim, kan b'shar yomi, which of course we know Chanukah and Purim are still around, whereas the rest of the days in Megillas Tainis are no longer. And that is the conclusion of this lengthy discussion whether it was batal or not. We have 3 different questions. He's trying to prove it was batal, and at the end of the day, the Gemara is concluding that for the most part, Megillas Tainis was batal, and on all those days you could fast. But for Chanukah and Purim, it's still around, you cannot fast on those days. And now we go back to din of the Mishnah that we said, Al Elul B'nei Rosh HaShanah Val Tishrim Nei Takanas HaMayadais. These are one of the 4 days that they went out, the Shluchim went out to tell everyone about Rosh Chodesh, so they know what day to keep Yontif. Says the Gemara, 2 dots, about 10 lines down, Kivan Denavuklu Elul Tishrei Lamalu. They went out on Elul. Why do they have to go out again in Tishrei? Tishrei. Maybe you'll suggest maybe you'll suggest the reason they go out again is because maybe they'll make Elul into a leap year. They never made Elul into a leap year, so why are they going out on Elul if they already went out in Tishrei? Answers the Gemara, we never found that Elul was a full month because it was not necessary. It's possible to make it a leap year. So Shluchim have to go out to tell them the story. Ask the Gemara, Hamikal Rosh HaShanah. What do you mean? But if you make Elul into a full month, 30 days, then Rosh Hashanah is going to be messed up for people living far away. Answers the Gemara, fascinating taretz. Mudav tiskalkal Rosh Hashanah, v'lo tiskalkal kula me'adais. We rather that Rosh Hashanah be messed up and not that all the Yomim Tovim be on the wrong day. They can now bring you a proof. To fix the mayada is a fascinating idea. I think we would all think that Rosh Hashanah is most important. Says the Gemara, we have to ensure that all the days of Yontif are kept on the proper days. And now we continued in the Mishnah of Al Kislim Nechanik of Aladim Neapurim. Asks the Gemara, and if they made a leap year, they should even go out for the second Adar. Explains the Gemara, Loikatani, we didn't say that. Meaning the Mishnah did not say they will go out for the second Adar. Clearly, Masisa and the Loika Rabbi, the Tani learned to the Brayso Rabbi Omer. In this Abra Hashana, if they made a leap year, Yoitin Afal Adar Sheni, they will go out even for the second Adam Neapurim. So our Mishnah disagrees. So we have a machlokes between our Mishnah and Rabbi whether they would send out the Shluchim to tell everyone about the second Adar. Now the Gemara suggests what is at the root of what's the crux of this debate, whether they'll go out for the second Adar. Leima Baka Mifliki, the Marsavar Kol Mitzvah Nagas B'Sheni, Nagas B'Rishayin, the Marsav Kol Mitzvah Nagas B'Sheni, Nagas B'Rishayin. It suggests the Gemara that you know what the machlekes is, that our Mishnah holds that all the mitzvahs that you do in the second, you can do in the first. So it's no big deal. You don't have to go out for the second Adar because you could do all the mitzvahs in the first Adar. Whereas Rabbi holds not. Answers the Gemara, Loi. The Kuliyama mitzvah Nagas B'Sheni and Nagas B'Rishon. Everyone holds you can't do both. We're debating whether, you make a fixed number for the first Adar with regard to Iber Shana. Titania, Kama Iber Shana, Lamid Yoim. We learned in the Brayso, how many days does the first Adar, when you add in, when you make a leap year, how many days is the first Adar? Shleishim Yoim. Whereas if Shim Gamliel Leimer Chadash, it's a month, referring to the fact, and the Gemara is going to explain what that means in a moment. And therefore says the Gemara, our Mishnah is going with the opinion of the Tanakhama, and the first Adar is always 30 days, so you don't have to send out Eidim for the second Adar. Ask the Gemara, Maishna Lamed, why is it different that the first Adar is always 30 days, you don't have to send out the Shluchim? Tiyadi, because everyone knows the first Adar is 30, and the second Adar is going to be 31 days after the first one. Chodesh Nami Yadi, they also know what it means a month. That is 29 days. Amar Papa, Mandamar Chodesh, Ratza Shleishim. That's what gets confusing. If you hold it's a month, it could be either 29 or 30, and that's why you would have to send out hey, Shliach, even though it is a little bit higher up, we're going to stop over here with the testimony of Yeshua and Levi with regard to the leap months, which will take us into discussion for tomorrow. We'll pick up from here, Mirza Hashem.